Howie calling from Fort Lauderdale, Florida. How about that, Howie? You're on the Morning Boys with Ryan Hickey, Mark Everett Kelly. How are you this morning?
Morning, Mark. Good morning, Ryan. How are you guys?
Hey, this is Howie Schwab. You know who this is?
It is.
Remember Stump The Schwab?
Wow.
Yeah.
Howie, good to talk to you. How are you doing?
I'm doing fine, thanks. I always want to be supportive of Mr. Mark Kelly, who I worked with for many years and who's a hard worker and a great human being who's gone through a lot. And just happy to be with you guys, and was going to talk to you guys about the game last night because it was a pretty amazing game. And once again, the 72 Dolphins are celebrating.
Yeah.
Because no unbeaten teams.
Yeah. And Howie is legendary. I mean, Howie was one of the first workers at ESPN. He had really built the station. A lot of it was based on his hard work, and he was the first researcher there. He was the one responsible for so many things. One of the most brilliant minds I've ever met. He knows more about sports overall. I mean, that's why he got the show. It was with Stuart Scott. And I mean, you won, what, 90% of the challenges that you had on Stump The Schwab, right, Howie?
No, actually it was 80.
Oh, okay, yeah.
But,
Only 80%.
Who's counting
yeah.
anyway, right?
No, but hey, I lost 16 times. That's okay. I'm human. And I had a great time. That's a long time ago. And right now, I'm enjoying life down in Florida. There's no snow.
Yeah. Yes, especially with the weather up here in New York, supposed to be getting to the low 20s tonight. Howie, I couldn't be more jealous right now. Fort Lauderdale, Florida. The humidity, I'm sure, in the summertime, I'll take that right now compared to what we're about to get here in the Northeast. But
well, I'll tell you what, it was 82 yesterday.
Killing me.
And people said, oh, it's a little cool out.
Yeah, oh, my God.
Yes.
Oh, man,
Good humor,
82
but,
and cool. That is, what a life, what a life.
So what did you see last night, Howie, as far as out of the 49ers and the Seahawks? How is this Seahawks team different from the ones that won the Super Bowl?
Well, I think it's very simple. The addition of Jadeveon Clowney is going to make a big difference down the stretch. And last night you saw the dominant performer that he was capable of being. I mean, what he did in that game, he turned the game around with that the touchdown he scored. I mean, the pressure he put on Garoppolo the whole night. I mean, it was just an incredible defensive performance. I mean, I was thinking him and Khalil Mack, the kind of dominance that you're seeing, I think it makes a big difference for Seattle, and I think it gives them a boost. And it also helped that McLaughlin missed that field goal in overtime, but whereas Seattle, of course, converted. And it was just a great, dramatic game. And the only thing is it ended too late.
Yeah, going overtime. I said it was almost midnight on the East, or over midnight, excuse me, on the East Coast.
It was past midnight in the East, but hey, I guess ESPN's happy they finally had a good game. So.
Yes, they have gotten the short end of the stick on a lot of these matchups so far on Monday night. Howie, let me ask you this: we're kind of talking about our biggest takeaways from the game last night. To me, looking at these two teams, how evenly matched they were. I, coming out of last night, kind of view these two teams as the top, if you're going to have odds, as the top Super Bowl or the top two teams to get to the Super Bowl and win the Super Bowl in the NFL. I'll put them over the Patriots. I'd put them over teams like the Saints or the Packers. Did you come in out of last night's game with, it going back and forth, going again to the final gun in overtime there? Do you kind of take that same sentiment away from that, or do you see any weaknesses exposed, I guess, either with the Seahawks or with the 49ers?
I think both teams are right up there, and I think the great thing about the NFL is it is wide open because when you look at those two teams, the Saints, I think you kind of take a step back after they lost to the Falcons. I mean, that was a 1-7 Falcon team going nowhere, and the Saints couldn't move the ball. It was crazy. I mean, Thomas had a great game, but after that, you wonder. But, I mean, it's really going to come down to who's hot at the right time. I mean, Seattle, remember this, Kittle didn't play. I mean,
right.
He's a big weapon for them at tight end, and he's a difference maker. I mean, he had games over 100 yards already. San Fran, I think the key is running the football. to balance things out with Garoppolo throwing it. I mean, the Niners, hey, let's face it, if you had said before the season they'd come into next week with just one loss, you take that. Take that in a heartbeat. Lynch has done a great job putting this team together. Shanahan's done a good job coaching it. I mean, the NFC is wide open. I mean, when I look at it, a team like Minnesota is getting no respect. And what they did against Dallas, you have to be impressed.
Mm-hmm.
Winning at Dallas on a nationally televised game,
mm-hmm.
and Minnesota's playing great.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I think some people wonder. I know Ryan and I talked about it. Wonder about Kirk Cousins if he is going to show up as much as he does in other games down the stretch. And I think that you really can't judge him on anything before. And there were instances where he did, but this is a whole different team as far as talent. And they're kind of just starting to really understand each other now.
And the way Dalvin Cook is running the football,
mm-hmm.
The Vikings are going to be dangerous. I think the Packers are dangerous. They have so many offensive weapons. They're running the ball so well. Aaron Jones leads the league in touchdowns.
Yep.
The receiving court, Devontae Adams has done very little, and yet he's a threat.
Mm-hmm.
Allison's a threat.
Mm-hmm.
Lazard suddenly has become a threat. Jimmy Graham, the tight end, is a threat.
Mm-hmm.
They have so many offensive weapons, and Aaron Rodgers is so tough in clutch situations. I wouldn't write them off either.
Yeah.
The AFC right now looks like Ravens Patriots.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, the Chiefs can still be heard from. Mahomes, first game back, they should have stopped the Titans. They couldn't. Strange, but I mean, that division's become interesting now. The Chiefs and Raiders.
Yep.
But I think it's great that it's so wide open. It's unpredictable. That's what fans love, and that's why the NFL is great.
Yeah. Now,
like I said, a 1-7 Falcons team beats the Saints.
Right.
You never know. So,
or like, how do you explain the Chargers manhandling the Packers 2 weeks ago?
Well, the Chargers the Chargers beat up the Packers and yet lose to the Raiders.
Mm-hmm.
Go figure.
They should have lost to the Bears. It seems like they always play down to their opponent. The consistency just isn't there. For Phillip Rivers, I think that's kind of what's haunted him his whole career.
All I can say is this. Fans should be very excited because right now you have the winter meetings and the awards week in baseball. You have the NFL looking great. You have college football maybe getting interesting now because after LSU beat Alabama, after Minnesota beat Penn State, you still have Ohio State and LSU as the two dominant teams, but the race for the playoffs is getting interesting too. And then NBA, college basketball, hockey, you have everything right now. So this is a great time of year for a sports fan like us, Mark.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Ryan.
Howie, you, like I said, nailed it perfect. Everything right now is kind of coming to fruition. All four sports are just super exciting. It couldn't be a better time to be a sports fan. So just quickly, at least for me, you hit on college football. With Alabama losing, Penn State losing now, two of the top four teams in the first initial college football playoff ranking take a loss. If you were the head of the committee, Howie Schwab, if it was your four teams, who are you putting 1 through 4 after last week's games?
Ohio State, LSU, Clemson, and I'll leave the fourth one open at the moment because I think it is going to be wide open. I think there's a lot to still be determined. I know people in Minnesota and Baylor and a few other places are like saying, wait a second, what about us? And I think it's got to play out. I mean, for Minnesota, they'll have opportunities, but they really need Ohio State to get to the Big Ten championship game. and beat Ohio State in the Big Ten title game.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, I think Minnesota, because of the strength of schedule and lack thereof, I think they may get a raw deal, which would be a shame. But I feel very strongly that we need at least an 18 playoff.
Yeah, right.
And there's no excuse because the lower division does a 16-team playoff.
Right.
So the only excuse is that the bowl games want to maintain their stature, and they rotate, and they have the playoff taking care of these bigger bowls. But you know what? They're not taking care of the fans.
Mm-hmm.
They're not giving you the excitement that you'd have, like with March Madness,
Mm-hmm.
with the NCAA men's basketball tournament.
Right.
But the season's so long already, and I understand you don't want to make it a 15-game schedule or a 16-game schedule or whatever, like the pros. I mean, it's just sad that teams get left out who had great seasons. A one-loss team, they have one bad game, and boom, you're out.
Right. And there's no chance for redemption. I think you look at Georgia, you look at Alabama losing. There's no doubt in anyone's mind that Alabama's one of the best teams in the country. And I think they're going to get penalized because they were given that benefit of the doubt in 2011 and in 2017 when they wound up winning the national championship, even though they didn't win their own division. I think that if you have at least 8 teams in there, you could create a matchup where you would have like an Ohio State, a 1 playing, an 8 where maybe Baylor would get their chance to slay, the favorite. You would get maybe an Alabama LSU rematch at 2-7 or something like that. I think it just creates so much more for the fan to look forward to. And I mean, if they already do with the bowls where they create and they give these bowls to the playoffs, why couldn't they just continue to do it for some of the lesser bowls?
I also think that sometimes you do not get teams playing their best football after sitting out for almost a month before they get to play in the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
So if you had the bowl games stacked so it was like an 8 or a 16-team playoff, you may get 1 week rest and then go into it and play it out. I think the other thing is college football doesn't want to totally conflict with the NFL, and so I wonder if that's a factor. I think the bowl games having so much power is more of a factor, and it's disappointing. I mean, having only 4 teams in the playoffs, I think it also diminishes a lot of the other bowl games. I don't think fans care as much unless you're a fan of a team.
No, I mean, you're right. I guess that's the toughest part with college football. Having the playoff now is right. People look at games like the Rose Bowl, the Sugar Bowl that had just so much allure, so much history with it, that now, like I said, it's almost diminished because of the playoff, and that's all as college football fans you look at. I'm with you. I hope it does turn 8 teams. I think, to have a situation where there's already